Lionel Messi, one of the greatest soccer players in history, spent years doing something that drove people crazy. While everyone else was running on the field, he was walking. Critics thought he wasn't working hard enough. Turns out they completely misunderstood what he was doing. Because sometimes the things that matter most don't look impressive from the outside. When people watched Messi play, there were stretches where he seemed almost disconnected from the action. Other players were sprinting, chasing the ball, fighting for position, and constantly moving. Messi would walk. Not all the time, of course, but enough that people noticed, enough that people criticized him, enough that analysts eventually decided to study what was happening. And what they discovered was fascinating. Messi wasn't doing nothing. He was paying attention. While everyone else was focused on the ball, he was often focused on everything else. He was studying patterns, watching defenders, looking for openings, gathering information, waiting. And then, when the opportunity appeared, he'd move fast, decisively, often changing the entire game in a matter of seconds. What looked like inactivity wasn't inactivity at all. It was observation, noticing things other people were missing. That's what made the whole thing so fascinating. Not because it's about soccer, but because so much of life rewards what people can see. We tend to notice movement. We notice effort. We notice action. If someone is constantly doing something, it's easy to assume they're making progress. After all, progress is supposed to look like progress, right? Yet some of the most important things people do often don't look like much while they're happening. Thinking doesn't look impressive. Listening doesn't look impressive. Observing doesn't look impressive. Reflecting doesn't look impressive. Neither does changing your mind. Neither does deciding not to react. Neither does recognizing a pattern you've been missing for years. Yet, those moments can completely change the direction of a life. Most people have had the experience of spending an entire day being busy. You answer emails, return calls, run errands, take care of responsibilities, cross things off lists, solve little problems. By evening, you're exhausted. And yet, there's a strange feeling that nothing important really moved. Not because those hours were wasted, not because those tasks didn't need attention, but because activity and progress aren't always the same thing. Sometimes they're connected, sometimes they aren't. That's what makes this so tricky. The things that make you feel productive aren't always the things that move you forward. And the things that move you forward often don't create the same feeling of accomplishment in the moment. For example, imagine someone who wants to start a business. They spend weeks researching, watching videos, comparing software, reading articles, organizing ideas, creating plans. All of those things feel productive, and some of them genuinely are. But eventually there comes a point where the next step is no longer learning, it's doing. At that point, more research can start looking suspiciously similar to avoidance. The same thing happens with difficult conversations. A person spends months thinking about what they should say, rehearsing, analyzing, considering every possible outcome. Meanwhile, the conversation itself never happens. They're busy, they're engaged, they're mentally working on the problem every day, yet nothing is actually changing. Or think about someone who wants to write a book. They buy notebooks, read books about writing, watch interviews with authors, study story structure, collect ideas. Maybe they even create a beautiful plan. Then 6 months later, they still haven't written chapter 1. Again, none of those activities are inherently wrong. The question is simply whether they're serving the goal or replacing it. And that can be surprisingly difficult to see while you're in the middle of it, because visible effort feels reassuring. It feels responsible. It feels like progress. But appearances can be deceiving. One of the interesting things about the Messi story is that if you didn't know what was happening, you'd probably draw the wrong conclusion. You'd see someone walking while everyone else was running. You'd assume the runners were working harder. You'd assume the runners were contributing more. You'd assume the runners were more engaged. But that's the danger of judging something solely by what it looks like from the outside. A person quietly thinking may be doing more important work than a person frantically reacting. Someone taking time to observe may be gathering information that changes everything. Someone sitting with a difficult question may be making more progress than someone rushing toward an answer. Of course, observation can become avoidance too, so there's a balance. Messi didn't spend entire games standing still. Eventually he moved, eventually he acted, eventually he used what he'd observed. That's important because this isn't an argument against action. It's an argument for meaningful action. There's a difference. Sometimes people act quickly because action feels better than uncertainty. Sometimes people stay busy because busyness feels better than stillness. Sometimes people fill every open space because they don't know what to do with silence. And yet, some of life's most important realizations seem to arrive in those quieter moments. Have you ever struggled with a problem for days, only to have the answer appear while you're taking a walk, or driving, or standing in the shower? Most people have. The answer wasn't necessarily created in that moment. You may have been gathering information for days or weeks, but suddenly there was enough space for everything to come together. That's not doing nothing. That's part of the process. The trouble is that many valuable parts of the process don't receive much credit. Nobody congratulates you for noticing a pattern. Nobody applauds a shift in perspective. Nobody gives you a trophy because you finally recognize something you've been overlooking. But those moments matter. Sometimes they matter more than the things that get all the attention. A single insight can save years of effort. A single realization can change a relationship. A single observation can completely alter the direction of a business, or a project, or a life. And most of those moments don't look particularly impressive from the outside. They often look ordinary, quiet, uneventful, easy to miss. Maybe that's what makes this story so interesting, not because it's about sports, but because it's a reminder that appearances don't always tell the whole story. The person who seems to be doing less may be seeing more. The person who appears to be standing still may be preparing for something important. The moment that looks insignificant may be laying the foundation for everything that follows. We live in a world that celebrates motion. Move faster, do more, stay busy, keep going. And sometimes that's exactly what's needed, but not always. Sometimes what's needed is attention. Sometimes what's needed is the willingness to pause long enough to notice what's actually happening. Because when analysts finally looked closely at what Messi was doing, they discovered something that had been there all along. He wasn't disconnected. He wasn't lazy. He wasn't uninvolved. He was paying attention. And maybe that's worth remembering the next time something important in your life doesn't look impressive from the outside, because some of the things that matter most don't. If you're watching this and you need some one-on-one conversation with me where we can flesh out what you're dealing with, join my school community. The link is in the description. And please, share this video with someone who's been having this same conversation with themselves. I'll see you in the next one.